It was an ordinary evening when I first noticed the change. The way he looked at me, the subtle shift in his behavior, something felt off. But I brushed it aside, thinking it was just the usual teenage angst. After all, my stepson had always been a bit distant, especially after his mother and I married. He had his own life, his own struggles, and I respected that. But this was different. I never expected this would become a story I'd tell, much less a tale of deceit, confusion, and shattered boundaries. You see, I thought I knew everything about my family, about the relationships I was building with my new wife and her son. But as the days passed, I realized I was completely unaware of the secret world my stepson had been hiding from me. At first, it started with the little things. An unspoken tension in the air when we were in the same room. I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment, but it was like there was this unspoken weight between us. The casual comments he made that didn't quite make sense, the way he lingered a little too long when talking to me, or the way he watched me from across the room when he thought I wasn't paying attention. It wasn't just awkward, it was unsettling. I should have said something, right? I should have confronted him, but I didn't. I didn't know what I was dealing with yet. My mind tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe it was just the stress of blending families. But then, one night, everything changed. It happened when I found an unusual message on my phone. It wasn't for me, but it was addressed to me. It was a message from my stepson, sent in the middle of the night. He was asking for something I never could have anticipated. My heart raced as I read through the words, each one feeling like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just a simple request, this was a plea. And as I read between the lines, I realized it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about power, control, and the fragile boundaries of a family that was already teetering on the edge. My initial reaction? Shock. But that quickly turned to confusion and then fear. What did he want from me? And why was he turning to me of all people? My mind raced through every possible scenario, but none of them felt right. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in over my head. This was no longer just about being a stepfather. This was about trust, respect, and how thin those lines could be in a family. The next few days were a blur. I avoided him, tried to keep my distance, but the tension only grew. The silence between us was louder than any words could have been. I could see him in the corner of my eye, watching me, waiting for something. And then it happened again, another message, another request. This time, there was no mistaking what was happening. He wasn't asking for my help. He was demanding something from me, something I wasn't ready to give. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how far this had gone. The question wasn't whether I was ready to step up as a father figure. No, this was about whether I could handle what my stepson was asking of me without destroying everything. And then the unthinkable happened. I was faced with a choice: confront him and risk everything, or give in and see where this path would lead. What would you have done? How do you handle a situation when the line between right and wrong is blurred by emotions you never saw coming? Stay with me as I unravel the true story of how my stepson wanted more, and how I didn't stop him. For weeks, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't just the messages, though they were definitely a big part of it. It was the way my stepson started acting around me, almost like he was testing me, waiting for me to respond in a certain way. At first, I told myself I was just being paranoid. He was a teenager, after all. They go through phases. But this was different. I felt like I was caught in a web I didn't fully understand. His name was Ethan. He was 17, just a few years younger than me when I first met his mother. We'd never been close, but I always tried to be there for him. I'd taken the role of stepdad seriously, even though I knew the dynamics of blending a family were complicated. His mom, Clara, was an amazing woman, kind and loving, and I respected her deeply. When we first got together, things were difficult for Ethan. He was used to having his mother all to himself, and I knew it would take time to build trust with him. But I thought we were making progress. We'd spent weekends watching movies, playing video games, and even had some good heart-to-heart talks. Still, I knew he had his walls up, but I figured that was normal. But the messages changed everything. I thought about them constantly, trying to decipher what Ethan wanted from me. He'd never been direct, always hinting, never quite saying it outright. The first one was harmless enough, asking if I was home alone. But as time went on, the messages became more frequent and more intense. At first, I didn't respond. I figured he'd get the hint and stop. But the truth was, I was scared. I didn't know what he wanted, and part of me was afraid of finding out. I started to pay closer attention to his behavior. There were more odd moments, his lingering glances, the way he'd walk past me when I was in the kitchen, just a little too close. I caught him looking at me from the corner of his eye when he thought I wasn't paying attention. The worst part was, I didn't know how to react. I wasn't sure if I should confront him or let it go and wait for him to come to me. But the silence between us was getting unbearable. Then came the night that everything finally reached a boiling point. Clara was away on a business trip, leaving Ethan and me alone in the house for a few days. It wasn't unusual for her to be gone, but that night, the house felt empty in a way I hadn't expected. There was something in the air, something thick, almost suffocating. I couldn't shake the sense that we were both walking on a tightrope, and one wrong move could make everything come crashing down. It was around midnight when I heard a soft knock at my bedroom door. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. I had just finished reading and was about to turn in for the night when the knock came again, this time, longer, more deliberate. I opened the door, and there stood Ethan, his eyes wide, his body tense. He wasn't smiling. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, looking at me like he was waiting for me to speak. "Ethan?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't respond immediately, but then, after what felt like an eternity, he stepped into the room. His presence felt almost overwhelming, like something was about to happen that neither of us could control. I need to talk to you," he said, his voice shaky. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to handle this moment. I'd always been the type of person to solve problems, to find a way through difficult situations, but this was beyond anything I had ever imagined. My heart started pounding in my chest as I watched him. What was he going to say? What was he about to ask me? There was a part of me that was afraid to hear the truth, to face whatever it was that had been simmering between us. But I couldn't back away now. Whatever was happening, whatever he was about to say, I needed to know. I needed to understand what had been going on in his mind. "I don't know how to say this," he began, his eyes darting away from mine. "But I can't keep pretending everything's okay." The weight of his words hung in the air like a thick fog. I had no idea where this conversation was heading, but I could feel the tension building, and I knew it was only a matter of time before everything would come to light. But what happened next? That was the moment everything changed forever. Ethan took a deep breath, and for a moment, he seemed like he was trying to gather his thoughts. His eyes were fixed on the floor, and I could see the struggle in his face. He was holding something back, something he was unsure how to say. I stood there, not knowing whether to say something or just wait for him to continue. But the silence between us grew heavier with each passing second. Finally, he looked up, his eyes meeting mine, and I could see the conflict in them. "I don't want to be just your stepson," he said quietly, his voice almost breaking. "I don't want to feel like I'm just in the background all the time. Like I'm just a part of your life that you have to deal with." The words hit me like a wave, knocking the wind out of me. I wasn't sure how to respond. He was talking about something deeper than I had realized, something that went beyond the surface level of our family dynamics. It wasn't about him being a teenager or about his strained relationship with me as a stepfather. It was about him feeling invisible, unwanted, and possibly even resentful of the way things were. I could feel the pit in my stomach tighten. Was this what he had been trying to tell me all this time? Was this the reason for his odd behavior, his strange requests? I had always thought he was just a quiet, distant teenager who didn't know how to express himself. But now I was seeing a different side of him, one that was frustrated and confused, and maybe even afraid. "I didn't ask for this," he said, his voice shaking now. "I didn't ask for you to be in my life. And I didn't ask for this weird tension between us. But it's there, and I don't know how to fix it." His words stung, though I knew he wasn't trying to hurt me. I could see the pain in his eyes, but I also knew that something else was at play here, something I still couldn't fully understand. It wasn't just about him and me. It was about his relationship with Clara, with our entire family, and maybe even with himself. I couldn't pretend everything was fine anymore. It was as if the walls had been torn down, and I was seeing him for the first time as something other than my stepson. I didn't know how to answer him. What was I supposed to say? I couldn't deny that I had tried to be a good stepfather, but maybe I had been too focused on my own role in the family and not enough on his needs. Maybe I had been too blind to see how out of place he felt. But could I fix this? Could I change things between us, or was it too late? He stepped closer, almost like he was daring me to say something, anything that would make things better. But the more he looked at me, the more confused I became. What did he want from me? Was he just venting his frustrations, or was there something deeper, something I wasn't prepared to deal with? I had no idea. "I don't know what you want me to say, Ethan," I managed to say, my voice almost a whisper. "But I'm trying. I really am." He didn't reply immediately. Instead, he took a step back, his expression unreadable. I couldn't tell if he was satisfied with my answer or if he was even more confused than before. But the tension was palpable, hanging in the air between us like a storm that hadn't yet broken. As he turned to leave, he paused at the door. "I just don't want to feel like I'm invisible anymore," he said quietly, before slipping out of the room without another word. I stood there for a long time after he left, trying to make sense of everything. My heart was still racing, and my mind was flooded with questions. What did Ethan really want from me? And why had he chosen this moment, this way, to reveal his feelings? Was it because he was desperate for a connection, or was there something darker lurking beneath the surface? The answers seemed just out of reach, and I couldn't help but feel like I was falling into a trap I didn't fully understand. I barely slept that night. My mind kept replaying Ethan's words over and over, each time they felt heavier. I don't want to feel invisible anymore. They echoed in my head, gnawing at me. What was I supposed to do with that? How could I fix something that seemed so deep, so tangled up in everything that had been happening between us? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't just dealing with a troubled teenager. I was facing something much bigger, something I didn't know how to handle. The next morning, Ethan avoided me. There was a quiet tension in the air, and it felt like we were walking around on eggshells. I tried to talk to him, but he'd brush me off, his responses short, clipped. He seemed to be pushing me away more than ever. It made my stomach twist. If only I could find a way to bridge the gap between us, to understand why he was acting this way. But nothing I did seemed to make things better. The strange part was, I could feel his eyes on me, watching me from the corner of the room when he thought I wasn't looking. It was as though he was waiting for something, for a moment to prove that he wasn't the only one struggling. And that terrified me. I had no idea what he expected from me, and every time he looked at me like that, I felt more and more out of my depth. It all came to a head that afternoon. I was sitting in the living room, scrolling through my phone, when I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. Before I could turn around, I felt a presence looming over me. I didn't have to look to know it was Ethan. The air felt thick again, like something was about to snap. "I don't think you understand," he said, his voice low but urgent. His tone was different now, more intense, almost desperate. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding. "Understand what, Ethan?" He looked at me, his eyes wide, almost pleading. "Everything. You don't understand how much this is tearing me apart." I took a step toward him, my voice shaky. "I'm trying to understand, but you're not letting me in." And then, with one final, heavy breath, he said something that made my blood run cold. "You'll have to choose, one way or another. Me or her. I can't keep doing this." The words hit like a punch to the gut. I stood frozen, unable to process what he was saying. The room felt like it was closing in on me. What did he mean? What choice was he giving me? I couldn't breathe. Ethan's words hung in the air like a heavy fog, the weight of them pressing down on me. Me or her? I blinked, trying to make sense of what he just said. Was he asking me to choose between him and his mother? How could that even be a choice? Clara and I had built a life together, and I couldn't imagine breaking it for something that didn't even seem real. But the way Ethan looked at me, his expression filled with a mix of fear and defiance, told me that this was no empty threat. He was serious. The room felt smaller now, the walls closing in as I tried to process what was happening. My mind raced. Was he trying to manipulate me? Was this some kind of twisted game, a test to see where my loyalties lay? But why would he want to force a choice like that? Before I could respond, I heard a sound behind me. The door creaked open, and there stood Clara, her face pale and eyes wide. She'd been listening. I could see the realization in her eyes, the same realization I had only just come to. She had heard every word. "Ethan," she whispered, stepping into the room, her voice trembling. "What are you talking about?" I looked between them, my heart sinking. The tension in the room had shifted, a new layer of dread settling over us. Ethan didn't look at her, his eyes still locked on me. I could feel Clara's confusion turning to something darker, something I wasn't prepared to confront. Was there more to this story than I realized? What had Ethan been hiding from her, and from me? And then, as if the universe wasn't finished testing me, Clara took a step forward and said the one thing I didn't expect: I know about the messages. The ground seemed to shift beneath me. My world spun, and I realized, for the first time, how deep the lies ran. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest as Clara's words hit me. I know about the messages. I turned to look at her, my throat tight. The room seemed to tilt, and for a moment, I couldn't make sense of anything. How did she know? Had she seen the texts? My mind raced with 1,000 questions, each one more urgent than the last. Clara's eyes met mine, and there was a deep sadness there, but no anger, at least, not yet. She didn't need to say more, the hurt was written all over her face. Ethan had told her everything. He'd told her about the strange, unspoken tension, about how he felt invisible. About the messages. Everything. I wasn't sure how to tell you, Clara continued, her voice shaky but steady. But I knew something was wrong. I didn't want to confront you, but when Ethan came to me, he was so angry. And when I saw the messages, it all made sense. I opened my mouth to explain, to apologize, but no words came. The guilt, the confusion, the fear, it all swirled together in my chest, choking me. How could I have let things go this far? How had I not seen it? Ethan stood there, staring at the ground, his face unreadable. He wasn't angry anymore, at least not in the way he had been. His frustration seemed to have morphed into something else, something darker. I wanted to reach out, to fix things, but I wasn't sure how. I wasn't sure if it was even possible anymore. Then, just as the silence seemed to stretch on forever, Clara spoke again. But there's something else you need to know. She paused, her voice steady now, almost cold. The messages weren't just from Ethan. My blood ran cold. What did she mean? My world was about to come crashing down in ways I couldn't even comprehend. I stared at Clara, my mind reeling. What do you mean? The messages weren't just from Ethan? My voice barely rose above a whisper, but the weight of her words felt like a punch to the gut. Clara's gaze hardened, but there was no anger, just quiet resignation. She took a deep breath before speaking again, each word carefully measured. I found out yesterday. The messages you thought were from Ethan were actually coming from me. I blinked, stunned. It didn't make sense. I couldn't process it. You? But why? Clara's face softened with a sadness I'd never seen before. I wanted to see if you'd notice. If you'd see how disconnected things had become, how much we were both missing. I thought if I pushed you, if I made you feel something, maybe it would force us all to confront the distance between us. But instead, it's only made everything worse. I was speechless. The weight of what she was saying hit me all at once. Clara, my wife, had orchestrated everything. She'd manipulated the situation to make me see something I hadn't wanted to. In trying to fix our fractured family, she had torn it apart. I didn't want to hurt anyone, Clara whispered, her voice breaking. But I was so afraid of losing you both. I just wanted us to be whole again. The room was silent as the realization sank in. Ethan, Clara, and I were all broken in different ways, each of us too caught in our own pain to truly see each other. But now, in this fractured moment, there was an opening. An understanding. A chance, however small, to rebuild what had been broken. We had a long road ahead, but at least for the first time, we all knew what we needed: truth.